Howdy folks and welcome to the Snowies Camping Show. You are here today with Ben and Lauren and we are delving into part 2 of our Q&A because last week we got so many questions from our Q&A shout out, which was amazing. But there were so many that we couldn't answer them all in one sitting and we couldn't pick between them all anyway.
No.
So we're back. And before we do jump into our little blacksmith pipsqueak bag here that has all of our secret lucky dip questions, we just need to remind you to jump onto our Snowies Camping Show group on Facebook where a lot of these questions have been generated from and join in the discussion. And also hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to your podcast, be that on YouTube or through your favourite podcasting app.
I thought we got through more of these questions in our last episode. I'm looking in here now thinking
there's a lot more in there.
There's a lot more, so maybe
we're going to have to be a bit more efficient this time.
In your words, we'll have less fluff.
Less fluff. Right, you can go first.
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Let's go straight into it. And I'm not less time spent digging the question from the bottom of the
bag. Okay, fine. I understand. I'll do what you say.
Well, this one's an easy one. From Matthew Beach and Huey Boy on Instagram. Will Snowies ever open a store in Victoria, Sydney?
Oh, okay.
Victoria or Sydney?
Yeah, there were a couple of people that so these are two people. Matthew Beach and Huey Boy both asked about Victoria and Sydney.
Don't know. Not something where
it's not on the radar, unfortunately.
Nothing we've talked about. We're always focused on doing what we've got well.
Yeah.
If you expand too quickly, we don't want service to drop and prices to increase.
It's a never say never, but it's also not on our radar.
We'd love to be everywhere.
We would love to be everywhere.
We've got to be realistic in making sure we can maintain the service we do offer.
Yeah.
But largely, it's actually not a conversation we're part of. That's definitely not. Business. So
that's from the boss level.
We just talk about.
We're just the fun level.
We just talk about gear and other things.
Camping.
Yeah.
My turn.
Yep.
I'm not going for the bottom. Make it nice and quick. Ash Robert in the Facebook group. What extra essentials should we bring for camping on the beach? Any hints to keep sand out of the swag or the tent?
Well, a ground sheet, like a mesh ground sheet, is a good thing for camping on the beach.
That's true.
So sea gear is like the pinnacle, but they're expensive.
But they're like double layered, and if you put sand on the top, it just sort of falls through, but nothing can come back up.
Yeah,
basically.
They're actually invented. They're invented as like a portable helipad.
I did not know that, but that sounds super cool.
So they could lay it down in like a desert environment, sandy desert environment, and a helicopter can land on it and not blow all the sand up. That's what they're invented for. I really hope that's what it was anyway now that I've said that. but
that's
I'm pretty
cool.
sure
Just
that's the case.
With it. Roll with it.
So they then rolled it out to the camping
amazing.
World. But the idea is that,
my grandparents have one and it's amazing.
They're great, yeah. The sand doesn't come through, and if it does go on top, it falls through the bottom and it creates a sand-free environment.
Mm-hmm.
So
an investment, but worth it if it's within your reach for sure.
If you can't afford that, then there is some more affordable versions from
like Australian mesh,
Ultra Mesh.
That's
and
it.
I've got one of those, and they're really good too.
Yeah. So they're sort of ultimately like a shade cloth, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Other things for the beach.
Sometimes having those foam interlocking tile squares with the little holes in them, at your doorway, having a dustpan and brush at your doorway as well, so you can use the brush to brush off your feet and your lower legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do get a bit of sand in the tent space, you can quickly just sweep it up and get rid of it really quick.
Yep.
I think mostly sand in the tent and in your living space is really only a problem if it is allowed to stay there and sort of get out of control. So if you're sort of a bit on top of it, then you're better off. There's also mats called muck mat, which I know we've mentioned a few times. We don't actually stock it, but it's essentially like a large piece of really well finished AstroTurf, and you can use it to sort of clean your feet off, and apparently they're amazing for sand camping. The other thing that we have on hand is sort of like a little trug that's just big enough for
trug.
I think it's a little trug, like a collapsible trug. It's big enough for a person to stand in.
What's a trug? I've never heard of trug before.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like a little tub with handles that you can load stuff up and carry it around or do whatever you want with it.
So a tub.
It's a trug.
A tub with handles.
I have a feeling now that you're saying this to me that it's maybe a British word because it's come from have British people in my family, and I'm pretty sure that might be where it's come from.
Okay, never heard of it. Anyway,
I bet Kieran has. He's our producer, and he's British, and he'll tell me if trug is a British word.
If we could see him behind.
Oh, he's just said never heard of it.
Okay,
okay.
Right. There you go.
Moving on. Anyway,
made that up. That may or may not be a thing.
Probably made it up, but yeah, just a tub container type thing, small enough or large enough, I should say, for people to stand in. You can just put a bit of water in there and wash off your feet and stuff like that. That's also pretty handy.
Yep. I think having a zone, especially with the kids, like say if you're coming in here, go through here, brush yourself off, take your shoes off, and then come into your awning or whatever if you're really worried about getting sand. The main place I don't like getting sand is in the bed.
Yeah.
You're lying with sand in the bed, it's annoying, but yeah, have a spot where they can just brush themselves off as they come in and out.
Yeah.
But probably with kids, you probably just need to embrace the fact there's going to be sand everywhere. Otherwise you spend your whole time saying, brush your sand off. But I think the other thing with camping on the beach, probably some sort of a windbreak or some way to manage the wind, and just be wary that with a windbreak, sometimes that can kind of create funny little kind of
whirly wheels
with the sand. So Bob, you put a windbreak up, but that's then also kind of sort of whipped sand up in around the corners where the wind's kind of whipping around the corner of the sand break. And I've also found camping in sandy environments, if it's really windy, even if you've got the windows down, if the flap doesn't seal on the bottom, the sand can sort of blow up
sometimes
and
get up
in the mesh, and you end up with a layer of sand over the top of you in the morning if it's really lightweight sand.
Really painting a lovely picture here.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, still camp at the beach for sure.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm talking more from when I camped in dusty desert sort of place. I know that the dust got in. Sand's probably not as bad, but if you've got a nice fine mesh on there, or you can sort of seal the windows up, then that's fine. But yeah, just be wary of managing the wind as well.
Yeah. But I think main takeaways, something at your doorway or a transition point into your living space that you can brush or dust your feet off with, you know, a little dustpan brush type thing, and a good matting or something that you can rub your feet on.
Yep. One other thing is tent pegs and guy ropes.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure you take good sand pegs. Don't go beach camping without some good sand pegs.
And tray springs too, because you'll probably get a lot of wind.
Yes. Yep. Something to anchor it down. From Lynette in the Facebook group, advice on tent security, storing spare keys. I think it's an easy one. Don't store them in the tent. I have spent a lot of time in caravan parks camping in a tent and looking like probably the poorest person in the caravan park, and never had a problem with security, probably because there's much more fancy caravans that might be worth breaking into than my tent.
And I think in a caravan park it's a bit different. There's probably an added level of security that is given purely by the fact that they're generally quite populated and there's caravan park workers around and people are around all the time.
Yep. In a campsite, I think my opinion is if you go and lock everything up like Fort Knox and make it look like you're trying to stop people getting in, you kind of got a sign in your tent that says there's stuff worth stealing in here. So I think probably don't store, well, it seems to be an obvious thing, doesn't it? Don't store valuable items in your tent.
Yeah.
And I mean, all I leave in there is bedding, really, during the day. That's it. Maybe the lantern. If that got stolen, it's a pain in the bum, but the trade-off is it's probably not going to happen, and it saves me packing the bedding up every day. But it's easy to pull the essentials out.
I don't want to eat my words here with people who will tell me terrible stories, but I sort of have a vibe that campers generally, there's like that unspoken code and understanding and sort of respect of everyone's campsites, and it's not really, I mean, theft hasn't ever really been on my radar. It's not something that I've considered would happen or thought would generally be possible to happen, I think, because I've never really been in a situation where I've felt that vibe at all.
Yep.
And I mean, yes, we camp in a van, so that's a little bit different now. But prior to that, when we were doing tent camping in most of my life, I think, it's never really been anything on my radar.
I think if you're in national parks and things, it's pretty good. I mentioned caravan parks before, and I say that because certain caravan parks in locations like, I don't like to talk negatively about it, but Alice Springs Caravan Parks, it is known that not just the caravan park, but anywhere in the town, you get, young bored kids who they're not doing anything malicious. They're just filling in their time.
Just being rat bags.
They're looking for opportunistic situations that they can jump in and get some cash or something valuable.
So it very much depends on your location,
It
obviously.
does.
Yeah.
I think so. So probably some of those sort of spots where there is probably a community maybe slightly higher, maybe issues with crime or drinking or anything like that you do need to just be careful. I know I stayed in Derby once and it was a great stop there, but they did say to us, just keep your car locked up. Like just be really vigilant. Nothing malicious, just opportunistic.
Yeah.
And I did hear a lot of people, because I lived in Alice Springs before, a lot of people talk negatively about, this is going to happen. It's really dangerous. For the most part, it's not dangerous. It's opportunistic and it's hand in hand with parking your car in the city.
Yeah.
So if you leave your car unlocked in a city, someone's probably going to come along and steal the change out of your coin.
Yeah, for sure.
Thing, right?
Yeah.
So lock your car and don't leave the change in view. That's pretty much what I take for tent security.
Yeah. I mean, you can always, I have in the past just only had my car key on like a tiny little carabiner that you can easily like clip to something inside your pocket or something. So you've got a car key on you, but leave everything else in your car locked.
Yeah. For the evenings, I suppose it's different, but I have a car. Yeah. Everything locked in the car.
Yeah.
Car key is like in a pocket somewhere in my pocket or right next to me in the tent where it's not easily accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Next one.
I keep saying it's going to be a quick question and answer, and then we talk for ages, but
I mean, I'm a bit partial to hiding my car keys in a secret location on my car when I go for hikes and stuff if I can't be bothered carrying everything. Right, here we go. Sam O'Sullivan, Facebook group. 2 items you thought would be useless and turned out to be very useful. 2 items you thought would be great but turned out to be unnecessary. So this is one of those questions, thanks, Sam, where I was like, ooh, because I was like, I want more time to think about that.
Yeah. One thing that comes to my mind is a paintbrush.
A paintbrush?
Yeah, an old paintbrush. And I reckon I got this advice from a blog writer, Snowy's blog writer many, many years ago.
Is this the useless but turned out to be useful?
Well, I didn't take it and then found it was useless, but if I went camping and I'd left a paintbrush in my car and I went, I forgot to take that up before I went camping and then used it, I would have gone, actually, that's pretty handy.
Yeah.
Because especially outback travel, dusty, an old paintbrush, you can pull up and just use it to dust all the dust off the back of the car before you open the door. If you're setting up like the wheel, the top of the wheel arches, sometimes in the trailer and stuff. If you've got a trailer, you might use that to prep lunch.
Yeah.
You can just brush it all off with a paintbrush. Dusting the tent. If a tent's dusty, just use a soft bristle paintbrush just to dust all the stuff off the tent. You can use it as a brush to sweep your tent out. So paintbrush.
And your 2 items you thought would be great but turned out to be unnecessary, one of them would be your awning, surely.
Yeah, I mentioned that before, yeah. Look, they're great, but just don't use it enough to warrant carrying it on the side.
Yeah.
I muck around trying to tie around it all the time. It gets in the way of the ropes and I don't set it up enough. So, yeah, awning. Not much else. I'm
just trying to make you give me more time to think.
You want me to keep talking?
You've got one other unnecessary item or one that you thought would be great and then it sort of wasn't. Do you have one?
No. No, I take such little stuff when I go camping that I have got a box of stuff that gets relegated to when I don't use it. But I bought like a little, it's called a grandpa fork, I think, from Light My Fire, I reckon, which is a little thing that goes on the end of a stick that you can cook marshmallows on.
What, and you don't like them?
Well, no, they're great, but you can just use a stick.
They're brilliant. I love mine, but that's okay. It's okay.
I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel.
All right. Well, 2 items that I thought would be useless and turned out to be very useful. I can't think about anything that I've thought was useless that turned out to be useful. There have been some things that I've bought that were way more awesome than I thought they would be. And one of those is those little collapsible tubs that come in a set of 4 and they're rectangular in different colours.
Do you know what I thought you were going to say then?
What?
It's one of those collapsible outdoor connection stools.
No, I haven't bought one of those. I'm coming round, but I haven't bought one. But those little tubs, I was like, oh, you know, they're brilliant tubs, and I use them all the time, and I'm going to get another set.
If I come with anything else, we'll put it on the Facebook group.
Yeah, two items that I thought would be great but turned out to be unnecessary. Again, I think we've got a fair amount of stuff in the shed that we've sort of bought that just hasn't quite been right for us. But nothing immediately that comes to mind. I'm going to chew on that in the back of my brain and maybe come back to it at the back of this episode.
Let's add it to the Facebook group if we don't come up with anything, because I have most of the stuff I've got I take with me now.
I think, and it's one of those things that if you try to think about the answer, it will evade you, but then it'll just pop into your head later.
Come to us at like
2 a.m.
1 a.m. or something, Annie Longo on the Facebook group, funniest camp fail. She says she loves my green ants story. I still tell that. Funny. That was from my half lap that I did, and the storm and the snake and the setting up the tent in the green ants. And best light bulb moment. Well, I mean, that storm is a good story to tell. So
I can go with
I've already told that.
I can go with my funny camp story, which I don't think I've divulged. You would know about it.
Not the bogging.
It is getting the bogged.
I think you've told people about that.
Have I really?
I think so. You got the Sprinter bogged on a slippery track.
Yeah, so there's this place that we love to go to, which is very much four-wheel drive only, especially when wet. And we like to push the limits of our Sprinter because the vehicle can do a lot more than what you think it can do. And we had driven really late one night up to the Riverland, and we didn't get there until like maybe I'd say 9 o'clock at night. And we checked all the weather forecast, and it was going to be bone dry, and we were happy. And then our mate who'd arrived a bit earlier was like, just so you know it's raining. And we were like, oh, what do you mean it's raining? Like, no good, no good. And he was like, oh, it's all past now. It'll be fine. And then anyway, we get up there. But of course, we usually would go up there for a quick weekend when it's just me and my partner. And this time we went up with the kids, but we were also meeting 2 other families, and some of those families didn't have heaps of gear. And so we were taking everything for 6 people and some additional gear. So the van was obviously very heavy. And we got to this point and it just looked like an absolute slurry of just this grey clay just in this little part, which was a dry creek bed that you just drive through to get up into the campsite, which is, I reckon it'll probably been about 300, 400 meters away.
Yep.
And when we realized it probably wasn't a great idea,
you're already bogged.
We couldn't get back. And so we were like, nah, stuff it. We're just going to have to do it and we can get through it. It'll all be fine. And so we did. And then next minute it's all sliding and slipping and we're nearly there, and then it just wouldn't go further. And then so we had it's like pitch black, like 9:30 at night somewhere in the middle of the Riverland, and we just made all the kids get out and we gave them a torch and sent them with the dogs, and we were just like, walk there until you see this number, and then at that number turn right, and then go and tell, Danny and our mates what's going on. So they went off themselves because they're bloody legends. And then next minute Danny rocks up and he's like, what's going on? How can we help? And we realized that the diff was like was literally just lodged into this chunk, this like big sort of mini bulkhead of clay on the side. We just hit the wrong thing and the diff had just driven in, and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So what we ended up doing was getting the kids like in this little row of ants, and then all of us. And when I say it had been raining, but the top 2 inches of the soil was like wet clay, and then it was bone dry underneath. Yep. You take 5 steps and next minute you're in platform shoes because there's just the top, that kind of. Yeah. So it was just this back and forward, just like a little row of ants, everyone carrying something from the van and walking it into the campsite. And of course then the whole track just becomes this horrible mess because it had all these feet on it. And then I think ended up with my partner taking all of his clothes off except for his shorts and like shoes and everything off, and just being in underneath the van with like this little mini shovel, just trying to dig out the diff, and it's just everyone's covered in mud, and the kids are back at the camp and they've sort of sorted themselves out and they've been so great. And then Danny and then me and my partner, and we're just trying to like, we didn't have anything with us that could help. So we're breaking off bits of like dead logs and sticks, and we're sort of like jamming it in, and then we're trying to move and nothing's shifting. And then in the end, it was like about 11:45 at night. What we had to do was remove the wheel, one of the back left-hand wheels, and then fill up the whole space underneath it. And then we had to put the jack under because we couldn't get the jack under in the right spot without removing the wheel. And then we had to jack the vehicle up as high as we could jack it, and then pack everything underneath it with like logs and sticks and dry bushes and dead stuff, and then put the wheel back on, and then
that's pretty cool.
Drive the van with us all like pushing as hard as we could. And we eventually got out, and it was just insane.
Not so much a camping thing, but on the way there issue.
It was insane, and we're so grateful because it was, as I said, like 11:45, and we'd been at it for hours, and it's just like progressively descending into this, oh my God, but we did.
Well, I won't go into my aunt's story now, but if anyone wants to hear it, there's an episode called Ben's Half Lap. It's got that one on there. So best light bulb moment, let's leave that for another day because we've got
I can't even think of a light bulb
questions
moment
left in here still.
All right, let's go. Let's do it. We're going to get through real fast.
Yep.
Christopher C. Mills, Instagram, gazebo, a necessary extra family shelter or wasted crucial storage in a vehicle.
We did this.
We've covered episode 7, gear you don't need. We talked about gazebos as being gear you don't need, and there was a bit of a backlash, not going to lie. So then we talked about them again, episode 59, shelters for rainy days. I think
check those episodes out.
Check those episodes out because we've covered it a fair bit. It depends. It depends who you are.
They're too big for me.
Too big for me too.
Heaps of people use them.
Heaps of people love them. Too big. Too much wasted crucial storage from my perspective.
All right, next question. We're going to move along. JMS86 on Instagram. Any chance of a review on the 230 duck down trail blanket in winter conditions? I didn't even know there was a duck down trail blanket, but let's make a note of that and we'll look into it.
230.
Duck down trail blanket. But if we've got it, we'll do a review on it.
Yeah, I think in winter conditions, I think potentially what they're asking about is a real life performance review in terms of, how really well does this perform in winter?
Yeah.
Which is probably it's a bit of a challenge, and it's also a really variable question because you could do it and be warm, and I could do it and be cold.
I think we can make if we have a look at it and get some stats and feel and kind of compare it to others, and it depends whether it's been tested. I know you can't test the blanket.
You can't test quilts.
We'll be able to get a good indication of what it might be like in comparison to others.
Yeah.
So
we'll give it a go.
We'll keep an eye. I've not actually heard of that to date, so that might be a new item, or perhaps I know 230 is available in the US, so it might not be in Oz yet potentially.
Let's have a look here. Hanging out with Otto, YouTube. You answered this one as well, so I'll just handball it to you.
Sorry.
How practical do you think it would be to just throw your gear into the back of a car /wagon /SUV and do an extended overland trip versus the more traditional, fully built out options of a 4-wheel drive, RV, van, camper, trailer, etc.?
I did answer this one.
My 2 cents on that would be the only difference is just preparation. I think the latter setups allow you to have a little bit less preparation because you've got stuff sort of already there ready to go. Whereas in a car or a wagon or an SUV, you literally have to pack everything.
You mean if you've got a camper with trailer with
like if you have a camper trailer or you've got a fully kit out RV or motorhome or 4-wheel drive or something, you've already got half your setup there basically ready to go. So preparation would be the difference.
Yeah. So I think when I answered this, I kind of said that I think you've got to pack everything, but you also need to pack to the size of the car. If it's a sedan, then you're limited with space. But there's lots of people actually on the Facebook group that do that type of camping in small cars.
Yeah.
So there's certainly do your research before you buy, because before you know it, you'll have no space. So buy carefully. But the other main consideration is, well, firstly, what I want to say is the most important thing is go and do it. Don't let it. If you've got a car, and you can afford to kit yourself out with gear to do it, then just go and do it. It's more
don't
important
wait
that you do
until you've got this fancy thing or that fancy thing. Just do it.
Absolutely, because there is so much you can see without the need of a full drive. But there comes a limitation of a car. There's going to be some spots, say, if you're going to WA, you're probably not going to drive into the bungles in, say, a Falcon sedan. You probably might make it, but you're probably asking for trouble because if the road was like it was when I drove in there, it's going to be pretty rough. So there's just limitations to spots you can get to, but there's a whole heap of other spots you're going to be able to get to as well and still have an awesome time. So just get out there and do it, I reckon.
Yeah.
It's expensive to buy a new car.
Your turn.
My turn. All right. Okay, so this goes on I think a question. I don't know if we might have done this in part one.
So I think I put Karen's name there because she asked that question in part one, but I just was sort of grouping it. So.
Oh, okay. So Lisa's days, and also Karen Smart's asked this before as well. But favorite meal to cook when camping and camping meal ideas. References for other episodes to look at. We've got episode 27, which is all about camp kitchen. Episode 2, keeping food fresh. And episode 13, which is camping on a budget. We covered off a bit on meals and things in there for different types of setups and budgets. But
my favourite thing to cook when we're camping is, especially in winter when you got the fire going, is doing like a cooked breakfast. It's just my favourite thing. Chucking some bacon on, mushrooms, eggs, just getting the toast going. I don't know. I just really love a good cook up breakfast. It's my favourite thing to cook.
Yep. We cook a lot of the same meals that we do at home. Really.
Yeah, right.
You just got to modify how you cook it. Like instead of chopping up fresh tomatoes, if I haven't got fresh tomatoes, I'll just use a can of tinned tomatoes, which makes prep a little bit easier. And a lot of the stuff I cook at home, I just do when I'm camping. But I do love playing around with different types of dampers. Like just take flour and stuff to be able to make a damper with, and you can do all sorts of stuff with flour.
Yeah, damper's great.
Put all sorts of sweet and savoury things inside. And Jaffa line too is a really good option for all sorts of things camping. You can take all sorts of fills and you can put bread in that, baked beans, egg, chocolate, whatever you want.
I don't have a Jaffa line yet, but I am thinking it might be good to add.
They're underrated.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And for kids, like you cook it and then there's eating so easy. It's just a little pouch that they can take and walk around with. And, you can either use dough. You can cook small I've cooked small dampers in it. Just put a little bundle of dough in there and it just expands out into this little dense damper. So, that's if you've got a campfire. But if you're gas stove, then. But we've also we're hoping to have expand our content on camp cooking ideas in the near future. It's a discussion we're having. So watch this space.
Cool. Anne Cook in the Facebook group, she's asked, is it safe to have your lithium battery when it's plugged into solar panels and a fridge in your 6x4 trailer, in your tent, or on a blanket on the ground? I would say lithium and sealed lead acid, yes, totally fine. Other types of lead acid batteries can, I think, emit hydrogen. So they need to be in a ventilated space.
I think sealed lead acid does as well.
Do you reckon?
I think if you charge, I know with a charger, when you charge a wet battery, they say that it can.
Okay.
I do it in a ventilated space.
Make sure it's ventilated.
Yep.
The only other consideration would be temperature fluctuations. Batteries don't like to be really cold or really hot.
Yeah.
So wherever you've got your battery set up, there's no issue with your battery being near your fridge. Do you know what I mean? In that side of things. And in a lot of cases, it's good to have them close together. So, because if your cable's too long, then you'll have voltage drop. Your fridge won't get enough power. So having them closer together isn't an issue. It's just making sure that they're in a well-ventilated space, because your fridge also needs ventilation with a compressor, and making sure that your battery's not getting too hot or too cold.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
I think you mentioned sealed lead acid, but I'm thinking of like the wet fill car batteries, which is just a lead or wet battery. Might be different. I reckon we should probably sort of answer that by saying, well, we're not experts on that. So if you're unsure, use some common sense. If the battery's hot or anything, then you don't want that sitting probably next to you in a tent at night or on a blanket. And probably need to look a bit more into the warnings on the batteries and those sort of things, I suppose. If it says use in a ventilated space or away from flammable objects, then follow the
Especially if you've got like a portable power pack, for example, like one of you're using a hardcore battery box or like a rover, companion rover or something like that, the product manual will come with a lot of information about how you're supposed to store that and what are the considerations and safety issues and things. So
follow all those warnings.
Follow those ones.
And if you're not sure, then probably a place like Battery World or something is a good place to ask behind that, about that, sorry.
Yeah.
We're down to 2.
Yeah.
This one's from Lynette. For Facebook group, securing food from pests, just anything. I mean, we got cupboards, right, that zip up, but they don't seal it in an actual, like a Tupperware or similar type container.
I have a feeling we did an episode on this sometime really early in the early days.
Possibly.
Like about, camping with critters and I can't remember. About sort of food safety and stuff.
If I've got food that is in its original packaging, then I'm relatively comfortable just having that, say, in a tub that's got a lid sitting on top or it's stacked tubs.
Mm-hmm.
If I've opened that packaging, then it's got to go in like an airtight container because ants and things, the ones that will get through all the little gaps are the ones that are going to get into it.
Yeah. We obviously we've got the van, as everybody knows, and if you've listened to our Kangaroo Island episode, you would have heard about the possums that were prolifically raiding our van every night because we were sleeping with the door open.
Yep.
So, but for the most part, we have our food in storage drawers and things like that in the van under the bed, so that's not too much of an issue. But agree with you about having a good solid plastic food storage tub to have and having the lid that either clicks on with a seal or something on top to weight it down is generally the way to go.
Something big enough, so the gaps are small enough to stop, say, rodent, like a mouse getting in.
Yeah.
But as soon as I've opened it, then you got to seal from ants and other small
and I think the other thing as well is when you are getting a plastic tub, if you're looking at plastic tubs for food storage, be aware that mice can chew through those collapsible silicone tubs really easily, the silicone sections, and some super thin plastics. So just be aware that you're getting a good quality storage box if you are going somewhere where, mice and rodents and potentially plague-related stuff will be an issue.
This just reminds me of Anne's question. So I think it's at Anne Longo, about the funniest camping fail I've got. I don't know if I've told it, but a funny story about a mouse
in your car.
Yeah,
you've told that.
I have. Okay.
Yeah, remember you bought the mouse trap in?
Oh yeah, that's right. What episode was that?
That was your half lap episode.
Okay, right, that was a funny one. So
that was a funny
story. Last question.
Or you could use a squat strap to suspend your food from the tree. That was from our weird camping gear episode. If you are a diehard and you listen to our episodes all the time, you would know what a squat strap is. But anyway.
If you haven't, check it out because it's
weird and wonderful camping
worth
gear.
A look.
Jason Bartlett 904 Instagram. Do either of you own a camper trailer or a caravan? If so, show us your hacks. Sorry, Jason, neither of us do own a camper trailer or a caravan, but Kevin does.
Yes.
And he is our resident sort of caravan guy, and we get him in to do episodes with us fairly frequently. So if there's anything more specific in terms of caravan hacks that you want to hear about, let us know what they are, because I think when you say, what are your hacks, there's a huge range of them. So if there's more specifics that you'd love to know, we can definitely get that for you from Kev, because he's a bloody fountain of knowledge, that guy.
Well, we've noted that we're going to talk about an episode with him taking like spares and those sort of things for caravanning. So we'll see how much he's got to say. We might be able to do that in the same episode about any hacks that are not, in the user manual for your caravan, but just a good idea.
Yeah.
We'll put that to him as well.
Thanks so much for your questions, everyone. I'm pretty sure that's all of the questions. That's everything, right?
It was. I thought we'd go through some of them quickly, but as we're able to talk about tent pegs for a long period of time, there's some questions that should just be one-word answers.
That was part 2 and we did part 1 and there was a lot of questions there, but I always love the Q&A things. They make me think about different things that I would usually think about.
And we got a whole list of new topics to talk
and there's also quite a lot of follow-up we need to do in the Facebook group there too, I think. Thanks so much for joining us again for the rest of our Q&A session today. We will see you again next week, and don't forget to subscribe. Catch you later.
See you later.